A couple years ago, a close friend, Ashley, started a long-distance relationship with a guy, Chris. He has been really good to her, and after meeting in person a few times, they decided to move in together. I was super happy for her as she had a few bad relationships over the years and it was nice to see her in a healthy one. That joy faded the last couple months before she moved a few states over to be with him. The issue isn't her moving, but that she repeatedly joked about having a baby from Chris. At first, I accepted it as jokes, but over time I realized Ashley was serious. For context, Ashley has 2 children from a previous relationship, ages 10 and 12. Chris absolutely doesn't want kids. He told her this at the start, and any time she hinted possibly wanting more, he shot it down, saying it was a deal breaker. Now, Chris is more than willing to accept her children as her own, because he loves her, and after meeting her kids, them as well. He's accepted that they are a package deal with her, and since they are at an age where they are semi-independent, it's not an issue for him. To me, Chris is a real bro for taking on her kids without issue. Hearing Ashley say she wants a baby out of him, one way or another, bothered me to no end. It's hard enough to find a partner that treats you well and accepts children that aren't their own. To find one that does and then talk about plotting to force a baby seems gross and manipulative. Before her move, I had sat down with Ashley, trying to talk sense into her. At first she resisted, but finally it seemed she understood how shitty it would be. After I felt like she had understood, I put the issue behind me and helped support her through the hassle of moving. A few days after she left, I got a call from a mutual friend who delves into the Wiccan / metaphysical realm. She was distraught and confessed to me that shortly before Ashley's move, Ashley had come to her asking for a fertility spell. This friend didn't feel comfortable about it and refused. When pushed, she said she cast a spell for a healthy and honest relationship, but told Ashley it was for fertility. As you can imagine, I was livid. I messaged Ashley, confronting her about what I learned, and she laughed it off as she was desperate, but magic is fake anyway. So what's the harm? She then let it slip that since Chris was planning on getting a vasectomy in a few months, she had poked holes in their condoms as a last-ditch effort. At that point, I couldn't stay silent. I gathered up screenshots of all the conversations over the last few months and sent them to Chris. He understandably freaked out and kicked her out. Now, Ashley hates me because she was kicked out after a huge move and didn't have a job or money to make it back. She said I'm a terrible person for putting her and her kids out on the street. When my sister, Annie, was 18 and I was 21, she got pregnant and had a daughter, Sophie. She developed what we believe was postpartum depression, but was never diagnosed as she refused therapy. When Annie's school started up again, our mother took on all childcare of Sophie. As Mum took on more childcare, Annie seemed more like her old self, happy, outgoing, generally mentally healthy. Then within 6 months of Sophie's birth, Annie got pregnant again with another girl, Laura, and the cycle of PPD symptoms, Mum taking over, and Annie's mood improving repeated. When Laura was 2 and Sophie was 3, Annie decided to move out of our parents' home, alone, and said she wanted our parents to adopt / raise her daughters. They said no. Annie said she couldn't take care of the girls as she had her own life and being a parent made her miserable. My husband and I already had 4 kids of our own, we'd bonded with the girls, and we had the resources for 2 more. So we offered to take them in, and Annie let us legally adopt them before moving about 8 hours away. It's been about 5 years, and the kids are doing well. It was a rough start, but we're now a stable, loving, healthy family unit. Sophie and Laura are 7 and 8, and Annie has recently lost her job and had to move back in with our parents. Annie has now asked for custody of Sophie and Laura. I'm writing custody like that because it wouldn't be custody in the legal sense. As she willingly surrendered all legal rights to the girls and can't get them back, we checked with a lawyer. However, Annie wants the girls to live with her. Initially she said she wanted them full-time and to legally adopt them back from us, which we obviously refused. Then she offered a compromise of alternate weeks, so 50 / 50 custody. Again, we refused. Given her insistence, we don't even want her around Sophie and Laura. So we've not been going by my parents' house as we typically do. It's been a month of constant badgering, insisting we let Annie bond with her daughters. and allow her to at the very least take them for overnight visits, saying that Annie had PPD 5 years ago. And now she's ready to be a parent. I've responded that we are not babysitters, we are Sophie and Laura's parents. They're in a good place and this will be detrimental to all 6 kids. And Annie doesn't get to step in now when she never stepped up in the first place. The response from my parents and Annie is that I'm being unsympathetic to her PPD and I should let her at least have a chance, rather than deem her unfit without giving her a chance to prove herself. Plus, given that we already have 4 kids other than them, Sophie and Laura could probably do with a smaller household, and saying we're being unreasonable for not allowing Annie to bond with her kids. I am a 39 years old male, and I lost my son in 2019 due to a chronic heart condition. He was 15 years old. It was devastating and I just couldn't take it, especially when my family did little to nothing to support me during these difficult times. They didn't bring my son meals when he was at the hospital. They didn't let me go home and rest even for a few hours. They didn't take care of other things while I had a lot to deal with. I wasn't offered any help, just words. They'd just talk but do nothing. Despite the struggle, I've created an account for my son's college fund and kept putting whatever I could get at the time, and my son would talk about that a lot. He was depressed but always believed that he was going to get better and continue his education and attend college. I started saving money to keep him motivated and to make him feel like he could be like any other kid with hopes for a good future. He had a very close friend that's about the same age as him. They were friends for 5 years, and I can't express how his presence in my son's life helped him through the worst days. Sometimes his friend would spend the night with us and try to get my son to do activities and lighten up his mood all the time. To be frank, his friend was closer to him than his own family. He never stopped visiting and asking how I'm doing after my son's death. He'd show me handmade projects he made for my son and as a way to remember him, and we'd sometimes just sit and talk together or cry together. Last week, while I was with my family, my sister asked me what I was going to do with my son's college money. I didn't want to mention this, but since she asked, I told her that I will be giving the money to my son's friend. She barely even recognized his friend and was confused and said that my nephew deserves this money since he's family. My mom agreed that I wasn't thinking straight and that I should help the people close to me, family, and that my nephew has a right to go to college, and I was wrong for giving this opportunity away to someone else. I didn't know what to say. They kept pointing out that I was making a mistake and how my nephew will resent me if he finds out. Thing is, my nephew wasn't close to my son. I don't even know why he'd be bothered. My sister went on about not being able to afford my nephew's college. I told her this was my decision, and I felt more comfortable that way. She started lashing out, constantly texting me, constantly wanting to talk to me, and ending up arguing. When I snapped, she had my mom calling me, basically guilt-tripping me and telling me I'm wrong and that I needed to think about this. It's just too much pressure and I'm feeling lost and unable to figure out how to deal with this. I have a lot of family members. I come from a religious community that doesn't believe in the public school system and tends to have a ton of kids. I have an older sister, Julia, a stepbrother, Ron, a stepsister, Molly, a half-brother, Joe, and a half-sister, Lucy. Growing up, all of us were homeschooled. This involved a lot of neglect, lack of textbooks or seasonally appropriate clothes / shoes, unheated house, and sometimes physical abuse. I lived mostly with my mom, but spent weekends with my step-family. Both houses were dysfunctional. My stepmom used to have a severe problem with alcoholism, although she's been better in the last few years. Ron is my best friend and I would be lost without him. We've supported each other through years of hard times. And we discuss a lot how our lives could have been different if we'd been sent to school or generally had a more healthy home life. Obviously, we don't want the same thing for our younger siblings, and don't want to see them struggling in minimum wage jobs while trying to study for a GED the way we're doing. When I went to visit him recently, I found that my stepmom had gone out of the country for an entire week and left the youngest two at the house. Ron and Molly both work. Molly hasn't been doing any homeschooling for about 2 years, and are out of the house for most of the day and night. I tried to help Lucy with her math homework, but she was extremely behind grade level and kept getting distracted because she had to make lunch or do chores. Joe spends all day in his room playing video games and gets no guidance from anyone. I tried to as gently as possible get him to do some reading, but he doesn't understand how serious the situation is. And obviously is having too much fun to care. So I called CPS and reported educational neglect. And obviously everyone knew it was me. And Ron told me that stepmom said I wasn't welcome at the house anymore and to never contact any of them again. Molly is extremely mad at me. She blocked me on Facebook and doesn't have a cell phone where I can reach her. Julia, who somehow heard about all this despite living across the country, also blocked me on Facebook and reported my Facebook as impersonating a celebrity. Facebook deleted it, generally making everything harder. This stings even more because I'm already estranged from my bio mom over my religious beliefs. I now have no family members left, besides Ron, thank bejeebus, who want anything to do with me. I feel like I make enemies everywhere I go. Ron has been saying for years that he can't call CPS, and I guess this is why, but at least he doesn't blame me. He suggested that I try to talk to stepmom once some time has passed, but I would have no idea where to begin.